Hello everybody, this is Zoe from No Safer Place, and today I am here reviewing one of my most hyped books for 2020. If you've been following my channel for a while, you will know that I am a huge fan of Kate and Liz Core. And if you were extra observant, you would have known it was a book from them by the books in the background. I wasn't able to go to Yelp this year, so couldn't pick up an early proof copy there, but I finally have one. It arrived yesterday, I finished it yesterday, and I'm here with 4 pages of notes, all positive. As you guys know, I am not usually a big fantasy lover. I really have to like a fantasy book to enjoy it. Sorry if I sound a bit off, I do have a bit of a cough and cold at the moment. It's not very nice. So the book that I'm talking about today is A Throne of Swans by Kate and Liz Core. Can we just appreciate how absolutely beautiful this proof is? I am in love with it. And this book comes out in January 2020, so by the time this goes live, really not very long to wait. I also want to say, before I start this review, that my pronunciations when reading fantasy are usually extremely wrong, so bear that in mind when I'm trying to pronounce things. But you may not have read it yet and may not know that I'm pronouncing them wrong, so fingers crossed. The story focuses on our main character, and that is 17-year-old Aderin, and she has just become protector of Atratis. Pronunciations already are killing me a little bit. She's become protector at such a young age because her mum died in something that I don't want to spoil, but it wasn't very pleasant, and her dad has just died from a sickness that was going round the kingdom. I didn't know much about this book before I started it, and even from just the prologue, which was just a few pages long, my mind was just overwhelmed with information. So new places, new characters, their roles, dominions, kingdoms. My head was like, wow, that's a lot to process in a few pages. And that's usually why I struggle with fantasy, because my brain just can't comprehend that amount of information and I just usually get a bit lost. But after the first few chapters, I got into it really easily. It was really easy to understand and follow, and that's very rare for me to do with a fantasy read. But the prologue, when you find out that the nobles can transform into birds, I was just a little bit like, wow. And then I've spent the whole of the book debating what bird I would want to be. If I was a noble, of course, and not a flightless. And I pretty much fell in love with one of the characters, and he is part of the Corvid family, so I kind of just decided that I would be a crow or a raven, because weirdly enough, they're my favourite bird anyway. I am generally terrified of birds, but ravens and crows are the only ones I like. And just on a completely different tangent here, I didn't know that corvids were birds. I don't know if that's just me being dumb, but there is... This is completely random. There is a new Pokemon game out, and one of the new Pokemon looks like a raven, and it's called Corviknight, and now I understand why it's called Corviknight, and everything just makes sense in the world. Sorry about that completely unrelated rant. Anyway, back to the story. 17-year-old Aderin, she's just become protector, and Aderin is now the last remaining swan in her family. Her father, before he died, begged her not to leave. He was really concerned about her because although she is noble, there is something about her that isn't quite right. I don't want to spoil it, but she isn't like other nobles. But after he dies, she thinks, fuck it, I'm just gonna go anyway, and she goes to the Silver Citadel to meet the king, who is her uncle. She is accompanied by her steward's son, Lucien Rookwood. Let's all take a moment for Lucien, because he is just the most amazing character ever. The more that I read, the more that I fell in love with him. I don't know why, but the self-sacrificing, noble man will always have my heart in a book. He is just simply divine. He is arrogant, which just comes off as charming once you read a bit more of the book. And oh, if you love him, let me know, because he is my absolute #1 in this book. And how I felt with Warden from the Bone season and Prince Ren from A Curse So Dark and Lonely, that's how I feel about Lucien, and he is just everything. Back to the story. This video is just a whole load of tangents, isn't it? I am sorry. She adjusts to this new life at the court really well, and although she doesn't see eye to eye with the king, there feels like there's a bit of a rift between them, and we're not really sure why. She does get on really well with her 2 cousins, Adet and Aaron. After a few weeks there, she gets used to their customs and the ways of the king, even if she doesn't fully agree with them herself. And let me just say, some of those customs aren't always very pleasant. Some of it does get a little bit graphic. The scenes in the arena are very gladiator-esque, very gory, and really quite heartbreaking. As she's in the castle, she starts to feel like something isn't quite right. She meets a lot of new people, things start to not make sense. Things that she was so certain of before, people that she was so certain of before. And as more and more secrets become unveiled and more revelations are made, we start to realise that we absolutely can't trust anyone, and the kingdom is completely up in arms, and there's a lot of death. Everything just goes south. I can't really say much more about the plot because it's a huge spoiler. I feel like the first half of the book is scene setting and world building, getting to know the characters more, getting to know the kingdom and the places, just familiarising us all with everything because it is a lot to take in. And then the second half of the book is where all the action happens and it's just shock after shock, revelation after revelation. So many secrets are unearthed. It is literally crazy the stuff that goes on. As I say, I'm not going to say much more about the plot, but it is very political, but done in a way that you don't really realise it because I'm not a huge fan of politics at all. But this book is filled with it, but you don't really realise that it's going on, a bit like A Curse So Dark and Lonely. Just full of political intrigue. I am not usually a fantasy lover, but I absolutely adored this. Let's talk a little bit about the characters. I've already spoke about Lucien, he's absolutely my favourite. Aderin, I feel like, is a typical YA female heroine. She is really badass. Her character development is absolutely incredible. She goes from this kind of frail, vulnerable 17-year-old to just this complete savage badass. I love Letia. She is amazing. She is a flightless, which means that she's a peasant of sorts and doesn't fly, obviously. But I think she's a really good secondary character. She is Aderin's lady in waiting as such and looks after her, and is also really her only friend from the beginning of the book. I feel like she's a really neutral character. She keeps everything calm and stable, which no one else in the book really has. Let's talk about Seifred. I don't know if that's how you pronounce it. I will put his name on here now so you can see, but I'm going to call him Seifred. I did not like him from the beginning. He is that kind of character that you just get the heebie-jeebies about. He made my skin crawl from the first interaction with him, and the more I got to know him, the more I didn't like him and felt like my vibe was correct. I'm not going to say any more than that. I'm not going to tell you if I was correct, but I hated him with a passion. I also really liked Adet and Aaron, the cousins. I thought they were a really great addition. I particularly liked Aaron because he just seemed really lovely and he had a lot of backstory which I really enjoyed. I would love to get to know a little bit more about him in the second book because he seems to have quite a lot of interesting stories under his belt. What I do want to say is this is very different to what Kate and Liz Core have written before. So the Witch's Kiss series, the books that are here, they were a trilogy, and this just feels like two completely different authors. If I didn't know that this was by them, I wouldn't have guessed. The writing style is completely different. It's aimed at a much older audience. I personally really like now that they're writing for an older audience because obviously I'm not getting any younger, and I did feel like this book was more new adult than young adult. But yeah, it's very different. This is also a duology. I personally much prefer duologies to trilogies because the middle book in a trilogy is usually a little bit pointless and a little bit fillery. So although I would love more books about this world, I'm quite happy that it's a duology, and hopefully we'll get more books about them in the future because I am so invested in these characters already. I briefly mentioned the world building earlier. As I say, usually if the world building is really intense, I struggle. But even though this was probably one of the most intense worlds I've read about, it was really easy to understand. Probably also because we got this map, and I'm going to show you it. How gorgeous is this map? I don't know how well you can see that, but oh, it's the most detailed map and I absolutely adored it, and actually referred back to it many times when I was reading just so I could get my bearings of where we were. I also mentioned a little bit about the character development, the character building. I thought that was incredible, especially Aderin. As I say, she completely transformed in this book. Also Lucien, it was nice for him to kind of soften as the book went on. He was really quite hard and stern at the beginning, and although you could tell that was really a front and his exterior was very different to his interior, it was really nice to see that happen and to watch friendships and relationships form in this book. It's all done really, really authentically and believable. This book was utterly fantastic and really, really unique. I don't really read much fantasy, as I've said, so I don't know if the concept of people turning into birds is a unique one, but it certainly is for me because I have never read anything like that before and I thought it was just insane. Also, this is probably worth a mention. I haven't watched Game of Thrones, but I know that there's a lot of incest in that series, and if incest is your thing, there's a lot of incest in this book. I'm not going to say who, but there's a lot of it going on. There was a particular point at the end of chapter 14, if you've read it, and my mind was absolutely fried. I read it and I just thought, what on earth am I reading? What is going on? So yeah, if you've read that, let's talk about it because I have a lot of thoughts about it. I have 18 minutes of footage at the moment and I don't really feel like I've said too much about the book. Maybe I have, I don't know. Hopefully, from this rambling of a video, you have understood how much I loved this book. It was completely unputdownable. I read it in a few hours. It comes out in just a few weeks now, which is super, super exciting. I would highly, highly recommend you go and pick up a copy. Kate and Liz, just thank you for creating another series that I absolutely adore. And this is a bold statement, but I actually think I enjoyed this more than the Witch's Kiss trilogy, which is just mind-blowing. Always lovely when I enjoy a new fantasy because they're very, very rare for me. And this, well, this is one of my favourites of all time, as well as Lucian being one of my favourite characters of all time. Could you tell that I loved him? Let me know if you've read this book. I would love to know your thoughts. Hopefully they can come across a little bit better than mine because this just feels like a whole load of tangents I've gone off on here. I don't know how I managed to talk about this book and talk about Pokemon at the same time, but we went there. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to give it a like, comment, subscribe, all that usual good stuff. Also, you can turn on the notification bell to be notified when I upload new videos, which is usually every Tuesday and every Saturday. I hope you all have enjoyed this video. Let me know what you would like to see more of on my channel, and I hope to see you all again soon. Thank you. Bye.